So, it is now 9 o'clock, so we're just about to start this session on a local production. We will have roughly an hour and a half ahead of us to share on this theme. Let me introduce myself. My name is Thierry Téné. I come from Cameroon, and I actually have two jobs. One is the cabinet director of the firm Afrique RSE, where we elaborate guides for CSR in companies in Africa. There is no link with the video that is shown on the screen, actually. It's got nothing to do with it. And at the same time, I'm also involved in a project which is to make portraits of lady managers, and it is a magazine called Dirigeante, published now in Cameroon and Congo, and soon in France. As you may know, the issue of local production is getting more and more significant due to the globalization of the economy, and the idea is to see how can we make the production places closer to the consumption places. And we are honored to have three people on this panel coming from Venezuela, Zambia, and Spain, not far from us, on my right. And I suggest that we first have a first round, so speakers can introduce themselves, and then in the chronological order, we start with Thomas, who comes from Spain and Venezuela. Then we'll hear Hector, coming from Zambia, and finally we'll conclude with Inigo, coming from Spain. And at the end of the presentation, I hope that, thanks to our speakers who are going to make the effort of shortening their presentations, we'll have loads of time available for question and answers and exchanging with you. Without further ado, I'm going to start with, on my left, with Thomas.
We need to have some short presentation. Who is Thomas?
Yeah, perfect. So thank you for the introduction. I'm very happy to be for the first time in Lille, but for many times, it's not my first time in France. Many times, especially since we recently run in Paris this summer a big event called the Fab City Summit, which was an event focused on the idea that cities should produce everything they consume by 2054. This initiative was born in Barcelona in 2014, when at the closing event of the Fab Lab conference, the former mayor of Barcelona was convinced by us to press a button that would start a countdown of 40 years. So in 2014, this clock was 40 years. As you can see, now we have 35 years, 262 days, until Barcelona and other cities in the world produce locally everything they consume to satisfy the demands of the citizens in terms of energy, food, and products.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Hector, it is possible to have them small. We copy you after Thomas to your presentation. That is the
just the introduction.
That's the introduction, please.
My name is Hector Banda. I'm the executive chairperson of a Silver group of companies made up of 3 companies. The first one is a Silver Catering, which provides outside catering for seminars, workshops, state functions, and even funerals. We provide food there. We also have Silver University. We own a university as a family. And the third company is the one that we're going to be discussing in greater detail after this introduction, and it's called Silver Food Solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. Et je peux parler en français, même si Ignago va parler.
I'm going to speak to you in French, so there's no reason. So, Inigo, thank you for being here. It's very important for Inigo. We have to talk what Mondragon is.
Merci beaucoup. Thierry? Oui? Ça coûte? OK. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour.
So,
Thank you very much for this session. Let me introduce briefly myself. My name is Íñigo Albizuri. I'm in charge of communications of Mondragon Group. And today I would like to share with you very briefly some ideas about the cooperation of our companies. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Ignago. Alors, on va recommencer. Thomas?
so we'll start again with Thomas. It's not that I do my presentation.
So as I was saying, yeah, just briefly, yeah, I'm Thomas Diaz, and I'm running different projects that I'm going to show you here. I am originally from Venezuela, but I'm based in Barcelona for the last 12 years, where I'm running together with a global network of people the Fab City Initiative. And as I was saying before, this initiative is trying to push an agenda, an actionable agenda for cities to produce locally everything they consume. As I was saying before, we launched a challenge for mayors of the world in 2014, where we were saying that cities could actually be able to produce locally, to provide the energy, the food, and the goods that citizens need based on local production. And something that by the moment sounded really crazy, it started to make every year more and more sense. And at the same time, it started to become even more and more possible. The rationale behind this, or of the Fab City Global Initiative, is basically sustained on the idea that if we're going to have over 70% of people living in cities by 2050, we cannot have these people and ourselves living under the same urban paradigm that we're living today, meaning that cities are importing products and produce trash. It means that in order to keep the life of people in cities, the consumption of resources, it's over the capacity that the planet has, as we have it today. Okay, so this initiative basically is based on a challenge, as I was saying. Basically, to put a timeline was critical for us and establish, we don't have all the time in the world to think about what is going to be the consequence of the rapid urbanization. As we see today, climate change is starting to hit very badly. Then the actual industrial paradigm is causing, extreme consequences from the social point of view as well. We see more and more the accumulation of capacities and capital in the hands of a few, while at the same time more people is becoming more and more dependent on what others produce. For instance, I was commenting yesterday in a dinner that there's this study that shows that over 1,000 people in the world, one of them produces food, and the other 999 depend on someone else to have food. And this is a big problem. If we take this not only to food, but take it to energy and take it to the basic goods that we need every day. So we have a Fab City, what we call the Fab City Manifesto, which are the values under which we are building this initiative. And this is a manifesto that was signed by, for instance, the City Council of Paris, the City Council of Barcelona, some other companies, and governments of the world that are saying, we need to approach the transformative process that cities need with a different perspective. No, it cannot be only driven by only profits or high efficiencies and so on, but actually start to produce try to have a more holistic approach on how the urban economy can be transformed. And then let me go back here. So not only a manifesto, but actually we have what we call our full stack, which is a multi-scalar strategy. And I think that's where this is where the key strategy is, meaning like I've been talking to you about something that might sound very theoretical and sounds very kind of aspirational, but the truth is that over the last 15 years, there has been a growing number of Fab Labs appearing everywhere. Who knows what a Fab Lab is? You know what is a Fab Lab? A fabrication laboratory or a maker space. To show you more or less, a Fab Lab is a network of laboratories that are promoting the idea of that the digital fabrication should be accessible for everyone. What I mean digital fabrication is the capacity of using digital information that you can have in your computer and turn it into things. It's used, for instance, a digital design of any object in this room and being able to reproduce it anywhere at marginal cost using local materials and using digital fabrication equipment. So these labs, which started around 15 years ago in the United States, they started in the South End in Boston, but have grown exponentially all over the world, are providing almost everywhere, the capacity to produce locally everything they need. No? Take an example, like we have Fab Labs, for instance. I can go, and I decided to use this because we have the capacity to see live labs and live people. This is a lab in Ecuador that has a team working on it, and it has certain capabilities. So this lab in Ecuador is able to design something using digital technologies, meaning like a digitally design in their computer something, and then immediately put it in a global repository and make it available for anyone in other Fab Lab in the world to reproduce it, without having to put anything in a shipping container and without having to use fossil fuels. No? So, as I was saying, we are based on this idea of having a distributed infrastructure for innovation in digital fabrication, which is the Fab Lab network. But then the magic of this is that when you have 1,500 labs in the world, then you can run educational programs, projects on top of this network, meaning that you can use the planet as a distributed university. So we are developing educational programs that are training people in digital fabrication and its implications. On top of that, we are developing an incubation program that uses the Fab Lab network as a distributed incubation program in order to develop solutions for productive cities. And on top of that, we can think about strategies that help to integrate these new inventions into the urban dimension. And then this should help cities to develop policy in order to enable the transition towards a local productivity. So that's part of what we're doing in the Fab City, and part of the strategies I was mentioning goes from helping industries to adopt open source principles, to prototype with companies like IKEA what it will be the future model of production in the context of distributed manufacturing. Or, for instance, in Milano, the Manufactura Milano is mapping the local ecosystem, not only of people using technology to make locally, but also of artisans and makers at the local scale. So we also play with different type of platforms, as I was saying before. No? One of them is the platform of Fab Labs that I just showed you, but also there is a group of people in the UK working on developing recipes for local materials, meaning like how we can make our own plastic in cities, how we can make our own leather that are not going to be dependent on animals, for instance. Or how we can, there is another more extreme recipe, which is how are we going to feed the world without having to use animal protein. And this is now starting to be possible by using principles of synthetic biology, for instance, in order to grow living cells instead of having to basically kill an animal to have a burger. So all these initiatives are connected with this multiscalar strategy. These are some of our networks, but these are the cities that right now are part of a Fab City Global Initiative, meaning that what happened in Barcelona, as I said at the beginning, that the mayor pressed a button on July 6 of 2014, and then the moment he pressed the button, it started a countdown. Other 27 cities have been following this initiative every year in Barcelona, and then that's why we were in the Mairie of Paris this last summer, with the city council adopting together with other cities like Seoul, Detroit, Amsterdam, or Shenzhen in China are part of this network. So this is also happening thanks, and mainly thanks to the efforts of the people of the Fab City Collective, which is a network of, I would say, believers, but at the same time, like doers that are making happen at different levels what the Fab City is aiming to, which is helping cities to produce locally everything they need. I want to put quickly a 2-minute video. And how much time do I have, Thierry? How much time? I have more than 2 minutes? Okay, so I'm going to put this video. I hope there is sound, please. Yeah.
When you click that button, you're committing to the next 40 years of Barcelona becoming the world's first self-sufficient city. Are you ready to push the button? Yes. Ready, set, go.
When production becomes accessible to people, we are changing the whole framework in which we have been building our society in the last maybe 200 or 300 years.
If you want to be the best, you got to move and motivate.
When you acquire the capabilities of producing stuff, your whole role into society is kind of reshaped.
Technology and data should serve the people. They should give them back economic and democratic control.
The philosophy at the heart of Fab Cities that atoms that are heavy should stay and move locally because it takes energy and resources to move them around. But bits can go globally. To me, that is a leap in industrial design that works with and within the cycles of the living world.
For me, Fab Cities is not just about a transition of a piece of infrastructure. It's fundamentally a transition to a different economic, societal revolution.
Okay, so, and that's 1 minute more? Do I have 1 minute? Just 1 minute. I just want to finish saying that all of this, we're running it from Barcelona, from Fabla Barcelona and from the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia. What I'm trying to mean is that all this research is not only happening at the theoretical level, but a highly practical one. And one of our main programs now is this idea of designing the emerging futures that start to come out of this idea of relocalizing production, because then the principles of industrial design, the principles of engineering, the principles of citizen innovation or innovation in general fundamentally changes, because we are basically kind of changing the games under which the society has been built in the last couple hundred years. That's short. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thomas, on peut applaudir. Thomas, s'il vous plaît. Thank you so much.
Give Thomas a round of applause. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour cette...
Thank you very much for this presentation, where We take away the fact that we go through 3D in cities, we model out, we print out, and then we try and produce as much as possible on the territory. So I noted from the document that we had a map of the world, and there was one continent where they had only one Fab Lab, and I think it was South Africa, which is at the tip of the African continent. And just to make a transition with Hector, after Thomas' presentation, we note a switch from production to the cities, and rather a technological production, if I may, while currently on the African continent, with 1.2 billion inhabitants, with a growing urbanization, 1% every other year, producing locally in Africa, what is the model that you are developing to meet this growing need of food and energy in Africa? Hector, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I hope that you can hear me. My voice is a bit nasal, owing to the cold weather up here, but I'm recovering, but I hope you can hear me. As I mentioned earlier on, Silver Group of Companies is made up of 3 companies. Silver Catering, Silver University is a company, university, and then this one, which is of interest for us this morning. As you can see there, Silver's mission or mandate is the provision of processed food and marketing it. And it is our hope and desire that one day we shall have a bright future, and that is why we put that map, and in the middle of it, very happy young people, because that is the future of our continent. You also notice that Zambia is right in the middle of Southern Africa, which means it has influence. What happens in Zambia would definitely have an effect on the 8 countries that surround Zambia. DRC, that's Democratic Republic of Congo, Malawi, Tanzania, Botswana, Namibia, and Zimbabwe. So what happens in Zambia does not remain in Zambia. It affects the countries around about. And ours is a mission of providing good food, healthy food, and teaching people, not even teaching, but educating the customers how good food should be prepared, how good food should be part and parcel of their table. The facts of the matter are that in Zambia, 4 to 10 Zambian children under age of 5 are stunted. In other words, they have malnutrition, and they find that there's a prevalence of death of 1 to 2 children in Zambia because of poor nutrition. So what are we doing as Silver Food Solutions? We conduct what is called post-harvest trainings, and these post-harvest trainings has resulted in 20,900 farmers being trained, not only in Zambia, but also in Mozambique and Tanzania. In other words, it's a mission that we are putting forward ourselves and our skills to our neighbors. And with this particular case with Mozambique and Tanzania, we were called by the first ladies of these 2 countries to go and train. And that is what's made up of that's part of the makeup of the 20,900. And 90% of the small-scale farmers are women. And that is a plus, I think. Is that not so? We also provide markets to smallholder farmers and empower them economically. When you have a farmer and there's no market, the chances are that they will not put in much effort. But if there's an assured market, you are sure to get very good results, because farmers are motivated to grow the various products that you need for your processing. The raw materials are processed into in our factory. We have a factory in Lusaka, and we package it into moringa products and vegetable items. Of particular interest should be the moringa product. I will take time to pass on some products around so that you can see. We have a saying at Silver that when you're holding a moringa product, you're holding a hospital, because it's a medicinal product. It cures all sorts of problems such as sneezing, coughing, and even when you cut yourself and you sprinkle the moringa powder on your wound, it will heal and there'll be no scar. That's what a moringa can do for you. According to our government, it's not a matter of just growing things. They are more concerned actually with capacity. They have a policy of, and it's a problem actually, they have a policy of growing a lot of maize, and that is a monocrop, meaning that they're more concerned with people filling up their stomachs with maize. But that is a problem because there's not enough nutrients in the maize. There's no value addition. And the price of this product is not controlled by the farmers, but it is the government that controls it. And we feel that that is unfair because the farmers know how much effort and how much materials they put into it. So they should be allowed to participate in coming up with a price. These are some of the activities that, that we are involved in. On the left, there is an example of the various foods that we make. They are mostly vegetable controlled. The last one, which looks like a ball, that's the key. It's called African polony. It has the longest recipe in the book that we have written. It's called the Zambian Cookbook. And the recipe is protected property by those that know how to make it. They prefer that they should be the only ones making it, and when they are making the polony, they'll tell the children, if there are visitors coming, tell them that I'm not here. But the poor children, when they're asked, where is your mother? The poor child will say, she told me to tell you that I'm not here. So obviously she's there. But there's a reason, it's a secret. It's a protected secret. On the right-hand side is the solar drying. This solar dryer was conceptualized by my wife, who's on the right, with spectacles. This is Sylvia Banda, and she's an expert in food production and food processing. She's very much directly involved. She has a hands-on approach to whatever she does. You also notice that all the companies are called Silver, 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 Silver. Why? Because she's the one who has really made us go forward in terms of our business. We removed the I in her name because when we're dealing with all the companies, we are many. But when you're calling her, she's Sylvia. But when you're talking about us, we are Silver. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. She's the benefactor of the company. Here we are making an example of how we have an advantage over our competitors. In the first place, our products are uniquely Zambian. They're grown naturally. There's no fertilizer used. That is artificial fertilizer. But we do use organic to grow the products. The solar dried, which is not the case with our competitors. And our prices are very low because of the input of low fertilizer input, which is from the grass and leaves that are available roundabout. The benefits of silver catering, silver food solutions can be seen there. We have on the left the food that is produced. On the right-hand side, those are grain bags of potatoes. Rather than cutting down trees, you simply find an open space and put soil inside, and you grow your potatoes. And the yield is much higher when you use that method than using the normal process. On the left hand, the second line is satisfied customers who are testing our moringa soup. On the right-hand side, where Mrs. Banda is stretching out her hands, that's in the warehouse, and those products are ready for shipping. At the bottom side, we have these samples of the Zambian products, and we use creativity to produce all these things. We didn't go into a school to learn. We used our own intelligence, our own creativity to come up with these products. I do not know of any country where there's moringa soup. If you do, see me outside. We have invested about $2 million in our business, and our revenue in 2016-2018 was about $850. But we have a potential of raising it to $3.5 million. And this we can only do if we get the $1 million that will go into those items that need to buttress what we are already doing. This is the team. On the left-hand side is me, Mrs. Band, and I. Then the rest are part of the dynasty. We have Kamanga Banda, who's in charge of transport. Next to him is the wife, who is in charge of general management. The next one is the bright young man called Chanda Banda. He's the operations manager, and he's also in charge of our university. Then the next after that is the wife, who is the finance manager. Beautiful girls, eh? Then after that is my namesake, Hector Banda, who is in charge of business and research management. And the last one is Kangwa Banda, who is called Chef Nesh. He has had training both locally and outside. So that's the team that makes up our team. We've won recognition both locally and internationally. Internationally, we see there on the left an American recognition for entrepreneurship. At that time, we had trained 10,000 women to be entrepreneurs in Zambia. And there are other trophies there, too numerous. In fact, there are a total of 70 trophies that we've won through what we're doing. On the right side is a National Distinguished Service Order. It's a national award for persistent innovation and contribution to the promotion of nutrition through training of more than 20,900 small-scale farmers, both in Zambia and in Mozambique and Tanzania. If you want more information, all the details are there. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Hector. You were a bit, you spoke exactly for 10 minutes. You were damn good as far as keeping the time is concerned. So congratulations. I'm a teacher.
Merci beaucoup, Hector. Donc on est passé la démo de
So we've gone from a production mode that is more maybe technological with Thomas. Then we went back to Africa with local production. If Thomas will explain to us how he's going to take up that challenge with that moringa soup. That's very interesting. I don't know. We have to find a recipe. We'd like to taste that moringa soup as well, which you mentioned earlier on. And then Inigo, now it's up to you to tell us how things are being done in Mondragon. So I'll ask you now, I have to take the mic, and you already had the mic, sorry. So you're going to explain to us how Mondragon was born, what is the importance of this structure, and what does it actually do? Is that okay for everybody? Thank you.
Well, excuse me, just I think that you have this, and I need this one. Okay. Yes, I'm going to give you just a couple of ideas about our experience, okay? Very basic ideas, and I'm going to talk about local production, but at this time in Europe, okay? Because it's quite difficult to maintain and to grow and to have good salaries and more employment in Europe, okay? In the north of Spain, one of the regions, probably one of the regions more rich in Spain, in the north of Spain, and we have in Basque Country an average that is even better than in the average of Europe, okay? So adding to multiply local production. Okay, in 1841, a young priest called José María Arizmendiarrieta arrived to a very small town in Basque Country, and he said, the cooperation is the powerful lever that multiplies our strength. And all our history is about cooperation, okay? So we say that cooperating and moving forward together, the addition becomes a multiplication, okay? So we have a slogan, okay? And we are humanity at work, okay? Because we think that normal people do extraordinary things, okay? That is humanity at work. Well, and just today I want to talk about only the most important ingredient for local production, and that is competitiveness. We need to be competitive in the global market if we want to maintain the local production. Okay, that's the only recipe, the only ingredient of that. So more or less, we have what we call the innovation triangle, okay? So we have the education, that is the key point of everything, the education of our people, our children, our students, our workers, in order to have productivity, because the skills of the people have changed dramatically in the last 20 years, okay? When we talk about workers, the current workers and the workers that we used to have 20 years ago in Europe has nothing to do, okay? Regarding the skills, okay? Because the world has changed dramatically, much more with a very high speed comparing with the education speed, okay? And also it's very important the investment, to make money and to dedicate a very important part of this money to invest in our own businesses, okay? Oops. Well, what do you think about, I would like to talk to you about this issue. Okay, is the internationalization process in a global market, does it help to local production? What do you think? Do you think that yes? Please? How many? No one, no? Okay, we think that this is very good, okay? To be a global company is the key point for maintaining the local production. At least is our experience, is what we have. We own 270 different businesses, okay? And we are 80,000 people all around the world, okay? But most of them in the north of the Europe. So every single company that has a global business and that have facilities around the world, they are more efficient growing locally. What does it mean? That if we have a company, a cooperative company in Basque country, and if they have many other sister companies around the world, okay, they are growing up in the number of employees, okay? So this is not so evident, but it's what we have seen in the last 30 years, okay? And that's very important. Well, and just now I would like to show you that we have a global project, okay? But we have a deep cultural roots, okay? And just now, instead of having all those things, I'm gonna show you a short video, okay? Because Thierry is counting my time, okay? I think that there is also music or something. This song?
We are one of the most important business groups in Spain and the leading group in the Basque Country. With a notable industrial, financial and commercial activity which supports knowledge, innovation and intercooperation. Present in the 5 continents, with over 100 of our own production centers, commercial establishments, and multidisciplinary local offices, which allow us to respond immediately, flexibly, and with service. Over 100 consolidated international projects have provided us with a global knowledge of the markets and the peculiarities of each region, and a profound experience in several areas. Mondragon brings together expert productive capacity in numerous industrial divisions, which allows us to drive new businesses, generate synergies to formulate global projects, and add worldwide economies of scale. In a market which demands flexible and comprehensive solutions, intercooperation among our companies is a strategic key. Our financial area is made up of banking. Laboral Cucha, one of the most solvent institutions in the Spanish market. Insurances, and a social protection system which manages a significant equity fund. In the trade area, we have a broad network of hypermarkets and supermarkets. Travel agencies, perfumeries, opticians, sports equipment shops, petrol stations. A culture of innovation has been vital for the successful competition of our companies. We generate, share, and apply knowledge through our innovation ecosystem, consisting of 15 of our own technology centers, investments in the units for research and development of companies, participating in collaborative projects with global leaders, and a constantly expanding university, committed to social and entrepreneurial transformation. This internationally recognized intercooperation allows us to anticipate needs and direct the research, and deal with a rapid technological transfer, creating products with greater added value, increasing productivity and quality, and having an impact with differentiating projects. More than half a century of experience vouches for our global reference business model, where employee participation in the property boosts results and accelerates the necessary transformations. When the only thing which is certain is that change is constant, the talent of motivated people, innovation, internationalization, and the ability to intercooperate are the keys to remaining competitive.
So only one thing. We own our own, our companies, okay? So the workers of those companies are the owners, okay? So in the cooperative movement, we need to pay if we want to work, but we own our companies. So there are so many different kind of companies. The university is a very important one, okay? It belongs to teachers. The industrial movement is also very important, okay? We have a lot of engineers, the university fit the industrial needs. We have the banking system, and we have the distribution, okay? And we have 15 research and development centers. And all of those things belongs to the workers working in every single company, cooperative company. Okay, thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, avant de vous passer
Before
la parole,
I give you the floor, I'd like to actually abuse my position as a moderator. Don't worry, we'll give you time to speak. But anyway, Inigo, if I say Mondragon is a multinational, what do you say to that, to this qualification? Yes, of course. That's what I say, yes?
Yes, we are in so many countries that you can say that we are, but the key point here is what we do with the money that we make, okay? So at least we have every year we invest 25 million euros in the growth of our area in social benefits, okay? So it's not the system by itself, it's what we do and how you do. The way of doing things, because we really think that there is a different way of doing business. We need to compete globally, but the way of doing business can be different, and we think that can be better.
Mais Ignago, dans les questions, quand tout à l'heure, quand tu as demandé
Ignago, when you were saying
quoi à l'internationalisation, les participants, eux, n'ont pas
the participants didn't sort of raise their hand to talk when you spoke about internationalization, globalization. But we also have all sorts of products that are made locally, bêtises de Cambrai, various. It's good that we should globalize this, but do you think that this globalization doesn't take us back to what's happening in the rest of the world, really? When you're talking about cheese,
we talk about big machinery, for example, it doesn't work. We cannot sell in our own city big machinery or big automatic assembly lines, okay? So there are some other business, no? Quite profitable business, very industrialized, very high-tech business that we need to be global, okay?
Okay. Merci beaucoup, Ignago.
Okay.
Hector.
Thank you, Ignago. Hector, in what you said, we noted that very important initiatives that are being done in Zambia and that you've deployed in the sub-region area. So when you're talking about this area, this region, are these Zambian products that go into that region, or do you try to produce locally to feed the countries? How does it work? In which way does it go?
The beauty about the geography of the Southern African region is that the vegetables are common in Mozambique.
Excuse me?
Oh, merci beaucoup, merci. The vegetables that are grown in the Southern African region are common. You can find the same vegetable in Mozambique, Tanzania, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and Congo DR, as you would find in Zambia. So that makes our work easier in that when we go out training, we find the same product. And that is the whole essence of our post-harvest training. We do not export the product because they're already there. All we do is to organize the people. Secondly, there is a skill deficit in those areas, and that is where we come in. We are the pioneers of moringa soup production. We are the pioneers of post-harvest training. So we have the skill, we have the knowledge, but what we do not have is maybe the resources to go out there. And that is why our being invited by the first ladies of these two countries has made our day. We produce the vegetables, the soups in Zambia, but export them to all these countries, and even beyond Zambia as well. And this is how it happens with the products that we export to outside Zambia. We have many Zambians in the diaspora, and when they come home for holidays, on their way back to their own places of study and whatever, they pass through Silver Food Solutions and leave a suitcase overnight, and they tell us what to pack in their suitcases. So we know that when we see a plane flying over Zambia, some of our products are in those planes. So that is how it works, and it works very well, and we are surviving because of all these informal exports, especially with the Zambians in diaspora. So we produce locally, yes, but they don't just end up in Zambia. They are actually exported, either formally or informally.
Merci beaucoup, Hector. Thomas?
Thank you very much, Hector. Thomas? Before we get that moringa soup in the Fab Lab cities, in your presentation, maybe can I add something?
Hector, thank you.
Maybe something has escaped me. Maybe I didn't think there was a connection with what was being produced locally, maybe in the suburb or the city, or is this Is what you do completely linked to innovation? How can you see how you're going to make a model of certain products to stay in the city, or is there an exchange that is done with the local producers with more natural products, in between inverted brackets?
Well, I think that one of the I think that the common mistakes to think about this is to go towards like a medieval city, like start to close the build walls and say everything should be produced inside the city. So I think that's not exactly what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is somehow calibrate how globalization works. Like I agree that internationalization and globalization is very good, but I think that it has been taken to an extreme in which we end up like importing plastic cups to our cities that are made in China. So right now, if you think about how cities are operating, they move materials around the world. We're moving materials because oil is very cheap. We're moving materials because hand labor is very cheap as well. And these are not real prices of the products somehow. So if you move oil to the real price, both like when you put the environmental cost of using oil or the real extraction costs that are not under like the administration of authoritarian regimes, or when you put the hand labor at the real price of what it's supposed to be, then the products are not as cheap as we think they are, right? So this is a red flag that we put on, we say, look, we need to recognize what cities can produce locally. We are not talking about like a medieval city that is closed. We are talking about like connected self-sufficiency. So we keep the idea of connected cities, but in this case, what travel are not the products. What travel is the information about how the products are made, and the atoms stay inside it in the city. So that's I think that what we're trying to achieve, and we know that it's not gonna be like 100%, and it will only be like this exchange with other networks. But that's the aim, at least the ambition.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Hector. Well, 2 minutes delay, but anyway, now the floor is yours. We've got about 30 minutes of questions. Who would like to sort of kick off? So, well, let's see what you say who you are. If the question is directed to one in particular, just say so.
Good morning. I'll try in English. I have one question exclusively for Thomas. You're in Lille right now. Do you have a rendezvous with the mayor? Do you have a rendezvous meeting with the mayor? Have you seen the mayor of Lille to be one of the cities in your group?
No, not yet. But it happened. Like it happened the last time we were in Copenhagen in September. We went there in part of an event, and we organized a meeting. As I say, in Paris as well. In Lille, unfortunately, not, because the initiative. What happens is that. Usually the new fab cities come out of the kind of a push from the local ecosystems. People like Vincent is over here. He's part of a Fab City Grand Paris association. It connects a couple dozens of organizations that are fostering the local economy, and they go and lobby to the city council, and then the city council, let's say, somehow comes to us sometimes. No, but then we work together with the local grassroots ecosystem, and I think that hasn't happened yet in Lille.
And my other question, I think, is both for you and Cherry. I'm sorry, but I don't think it's the same matter for Zambia. You're both talking about production. One of the topics we have to tackle is less production and less consumption. And how do you think you're addressing these issues?
Well, I think that we need to produce, okay, but we need to produce better. What does it mean? Well, we need to follow the rules and something else, okay? So I think that thanks to this kind of people movements, the final customer needs are changing. Okay, so industry, generally speaking, has to adapt, and it's because of that that it's so important to push government, to push legislation. Okay, for doing that, and the industry just will adapt to that. Okay. So here, when we talk about, well, we have listened to so many politicians, no, in the sessions. Well, they have a very important work to do, because the legislation is what really has to push not only the non-profitable organization, the industries, the cooperatives, but all of them for doing things better. Okay. So is the impact of the legislation of every single country is so important, okay? In our particular case, for example, we can move very well in Spain and in Basque Country because we have a specific legislation for cooperatives. But it is not the case of China, for example, or many other countries in Africa, okay?
Oui, Hector, je voulais prendre votre avis sur cette
Hector, I wanted to go back on this idea to the north-south axis. In Canada, we try all over the world, particularly in the north, people say we have to consume less. In the south, some poor people are getting rich, want to consume more, so they want to consume more to assert the fact that they're becoming rich. That's why information on Africa, even if it's a land of opportunity, that's what people say. That do you think that on this essential issue, can we consume less whilst increasing production? Is it possible to actually say that to African people as they get richer? Of course, what they want to do is like what the West does, i.e. increase consumption.
It's not a matter of consuming more. It's consuming the right type of consummation, if you see what I mean. You can pack yourself full of fufu, that's maize meal, but of what value is the quantity? What's important is the quality of what you're taking in. And that is the whole essence of Silver Food Solutions, that we are looking at local products being consumed in the right amounts by the people, so that way they will be better able to work harder on the land and live a healthier life. But at the same time, on the side, they're making money. We have a situation back home, a tradition really, which has worked retroactively, a disadvantage in that when you go to the village and you ask for, say, a sample of the products they have around them, they will not ask you to pay for them. They'll simply say, take whatever you want. What they do not know is that right there around them is a lot of money. And that is the idea that we're trying to propagate, to market to them, that the products around them, if they are processed and packaged in the way that I'll show in a moment, they can make money out of that. So we are looking at it from the point of view of the mental. We need to change the mental setup and bring that even in the curriculum of the schools, that we need to look at ourselves as indeed sleeping on money, as it were, because there's a lot of money in these products. But it's a matter of teaching them the skills that are going to help transform their thinking so that they may be able then to transform these products and make money out of it. Now, you might also want to know that we, as I said earlier on, we have a problem with the resources. But this is the way we have worked it out. There are in Zambia and many other countries in the Southern African region, probably elsewhere in the world, what are called NGOs, non-governmental organizations. So we work with these non-governmental organizations to arrange workshops around the country. And we go out there and teach. And once we have taught, we are paid for our effort. And it is this money that we use to pay the farmers. So it works out that way, and it works very well.
Merci beaucoup, Hector. En attendant, justement, sur...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hector. Thomas, under your control, so the World Forum, maybe next year we'll have a Fab Lab, City Ch'ti, maybe in Lille, in connection with the town hall. I'll take your question, please.
I've got questions for Thomas and Hector. So the first one for Thomas, I mean, how do you persuade a politician, a mayor, that a fab city is something that they would be interested in? What is it that really gets them excited besides it being a cool concept? What is it that really kind of drives their enthusiasm around it? And what kind of toolkits come with it to help them kind of progress in that evolution? And for Hector, I'd really like to know a little bit more about your post-harvest training. Is it specifically around the processing of the particular natural products that you'd like them to produce? And have you seen the means of production therefore being altered as a result of the training and processing that happens at a later stage? I mean, do you see that kind of circle happening, if that makes sense?
Merci. Donc, on va commencer par Thomas.
So we'll start with you, Thomas.
It's a very good question because I think that I'm still trying to understand how it's working, right? Like there is not like a magic formula. As I said before, like it highly depends on how the local team start to assemble. Not only to go and talk to the mayor's office, but actually the local team usually is doing things that demonstrate like no, we are doing something real. We are not just lobbying. We are people that want to make things happen, and at the same time we can come and lobby to you to say, hey, you should be part of this global effort to start a transition for cities to produce locally what they need. For instance, in Barcelona, we went through a very painful process. One was like we started Fab City in 2014 with a different mayor that it is now. So in the transition from a completely opposite sign, politically speaking, was very, very painful. And then at the end, we had to be very, in a way, opportunistic and try to play our cards very well in order to gain the support of these mayors. But then the support of it is something that is kind of something that could turn very bad as well. I think like especially public sector and the governments tend to be free riders themselves. So they see a good idea and then try to take it under their wing, and then basically you are left behind. And this happens as well. And then I would say, finally, I think that one of the things that work very well is using this, what is FOMO? Like FOMO, the fear of missing out. So it's like I'm making them think like they are missing the train towards something that is really important, and then we have like respected voices that are saying that. So that works as well. I hope that illustrates. Yeah.
Merci. The second part of the question is the tool. Thomas, the second part of the question is the tools to make.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. You're very good. Yeah, so I was showing before we just published last week the new Fab City website, where I showed briefly there are certain type of platforms and certain type of different things that groups in the different cities are doing, no? Or not. What we call the Fab City Collective, for instance, is a group of people that are developing the contents, kind of the meat of a project, no? And in many cases, these have turned into toolkits for the materials, education for materials recipes, toolkits for enabling environmental sensing locally, toolkits for adopting policies for local production. So all of these tools are available in one of the links online, and then one of the key aspects of what we have is that inside the initiative is keeping this open source. It's like make it as easy as possible to replicate the efforts that one city did to make it able to be transported to other city adapted to the local needs. So all that content is available online and for free. Yeah.
Thank you. Hector, la question c'était par rapport à la...
Now, Hector was connected to transformation post-harvest. We know we're paying 40 to 60% of products. What are the initiatives? What do we rely on to be able to solve this issue and optimize production?
The post-harvest initiative is a result of... you're from South Africa, I suppose? Yeah, you look like a South African. She is South African. Yes, she is. We recognize our own. We have come up with a syllabus of the components that make up the post-harvest training. First of all, there's the question of soil preparation. So that's where we have employed agronomists to evaluate the kind of soil there is and what kind of crops can grow in particular types of soils. So that's part of the training. We train the farmers to recognize that you just can't grow anything anyhow. It's a matter of making the right choices of what kind of crop can grow where. Secondly, we have the syllabus covering health matters, safety and health. It's part of the food process. If you are going to have a good product, it begins with the sanitary conditions in which you prepare the food. As they say in the Bible, what do they say? Yeah? It's next to godliness. Can you finish that for me? Cleanliness is next to godliness. So we take them through the whole process of good hygiene. We also train them on economics, or better still, I think more specifically, entrepreneurship. They are able to, at the end of the workshop, to be able to do negotiations on the price. You remember I talked about price, the government not allowing the farmers not to say what price they're going to ask for their product, but we train them on how to negotiate with us the price of how much we should be buying those vegetables. And this price is put in the memorandum of understanding, which is signed at the end of the workshop, and the prices that are agreed on remain like that for at least 1 year. Because we also have another agreement with the ShopRite, what we call the malls, the shopping malls. We have an agreement for that long, so the prices have to remain stable. We also teach them on how to keep simple records. Many of these trainees may have not entered school, but they need to know how to run their business. It's a business, so we teach them how to run their business so that they can take it seriously and see how they can benefit out of it. We also see, after 6 or so months, when you go back, you find that they have new furniture in their home, new pots and pans, and they'll even say, my husband who had run away before we started this program has come back. Why has he come back? Because there's money. The economy has improved in the home. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Hector. Nous avons encore quelques minutes.
Thank you, Hector. We have a couple of minutes more for questions. We have a question here to this gentleman on the left. On your left.
Yeah, that one is for Thomas as well. I had a question. Is your research and development and all of the innovation you make financed entirely by a city pressing the button, as you said? And if so, is your company profitable? If not, if so, how? All these questions, mainly financially.
That's a very, very good question. The commitment after the city pressed that button is quite vague, let's say. So they are not really committing any single amount of money to what we are doing. As I was saying before, this is a 4-year-old initiative. And we have been developing a lot of content, as I was saying before, through this idea of a collective effort. And now we're kind of crystallizing that into creating for the first time an organization. So we're going to launch in a couple months the Fab City Foundation based in Estonia, which for the first time is going to try to organize and also to look for funding to do what we're doing. This being said, what we have done until now is being done with zero budget or with hidden budgets, meaning that all these collective efforts, for instance, we started the initiative in Barcelona. I'm directing the Fab Lab in Barcelona, but I'm also a co-director of the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia, which has been the center where we have been developed the research around self-sufficient cities, digital fabrication, and so on. So with the support, with this initial push, and with the investment from the many partners around the world, we kind of created something that didn't exist. So instead of creating that before, now we are creating it after it actually exists, if it makes sense. No? So right now in our lab, for instance, our research is mainly funded by our educational programs, but that's maybe around 25–30%. But most of the funding we have is actually EU funding for research from H2020. So we run over 10 European projects that are based on research and innovation in relation to these topics, no, that we're treating in Fab City. But funding is one of the big questions for the near future.
Thank you. Hector, Inigo, je voudrais aussi prendre ton avis sur deux aspects. Est-ce qu'il faut aussi l'engagement?
Inigo, I wanted to have your opinion on two aspects. Do you need the commitment of the politicians? So you see that you have a South African delegation. So Thomas was explaining the model of research development. So how at Mondragon do you finance this R&D?
Well, okay, we try we have a particular legislation, okay, so mainly what we do is we put an important part of our benefits in the future, and the future is the innovation, okay, so we create our own research and development centers. Yes, now we own 15 different research and development centers, one specifically in plastic, others in advanced manufacturing, okay? And we also go sometimes to Europe for fundings, but mainly it's our own money, okay? What put in those companies, okay? So we have, it's because of that it's so important the policies of every single country. When you, Thomas, were talking about Barcelona, I remember, no, that the standard profile of politicians has changed dramatically in the last years. So the mayor of Barcelona used to be an activist, okay? The mayor of Seoul was an activist, and it's because people vote these kind of people, okay? So when they arrive, and they become a mayor of a big city as Seoul or Barcelona, they do things in a different way, okay? It's quite risky because you can elect the mayor of Seoul, who's a very nice guy, or you can elect Mr. Trump, okay? But it's because of us, okay? So in one sense, we have what we deserve. So we have to work both with governments that have been elected by people and with different associations, okay? Both together. Because otherwise we cannot, when we talk about social transformation, we have our own plans, but we negotiate with local governments, okay? Otherwise you cannot change the world. And it's what we really want to do, to leave a better world to our children. That's the idea.
Merci. On a encore des questions?
We have questions. We have a couple of minutes more at the end. So we'll have the question on the last row first. And then I'll come back to you. At the bottom, at the end. That's it, yes. Thank you.
Thank you for all of your presentations. I have one question for Thomas Dietz as well. Actually, when you talk about that everything can be produced locally, do you differentiate between the different sectors? For example, food production, but also the production of machineries? Because I imagine that it's not as easy for one of them as for the others. Also, according to what Mr. Albizuri said, that, for example, the production of machineries might be quite difficult, and that we have to count rather on global actors. And so another question that kind of joins us, do you agree with the statement that competitiveness is the most important thing that we have to count on, and that global companies are more important than local ones?
Okay, I will start and then I will pass it to Inigo. Also with an embedded question I have as well related with competitiveness. The ambition of setting this goal of cities producing everything they consume is something that we need to think in terms of a progressive effort. and not something that you say, from tomorrow we're going to build the Trump walls, and there is no materials going in and out of the city. That doesn't make sense. So we imagine a progressive effort that, that goes in parallel with, while you, for a city to adopt this rationale, it means like start to building the capacity for locally produce everything it needs. And I give you a few examples, no? Like, thinking about the 20th century's infrastructure in cities, no? Cities constructed ports, airports, railways, train stations. So we have shipping containers going around the world moving materials. That's part of a logic of a global economy where you have advantages to produce things because you have cheap labor, cheap raw materials, cheap energy. Again, the logics of our world today, I think they're not going to be the same. We are not going to have those things that they're not going to be cheap anymore. And therefore, cities will need to build a new type of infrastructure. And what ports and airports and all of this was for cities in the past century, I imagine that for the 21st century will be cities building infrastructure in terms of local manufacturing, urban farming, using aeroponics, hydroponics, or using the minimum amount of land. Developing labs to supply the food that the citizens need. For instance, instead of using animal proteins, using synthetically grown meats for people. And then you have this happening in buildings inside the cities. Can we imagine this? Probably not. But this is the type of infrastructure that I can imagine that is going to be built progressively during the next few decades, the next couple of decades. Otherwise, we cannot just keep, moving. Think about like I was talking yesterday in a dinner party. We had a dinner. Then thinking about you can ship, from Mondragon. You can ship from Mondragon to Zambia a container full of USB sticks. And you will feel like, I don't know, millions of them. USB sticks for people to use, to put in the computer and stuff. Or you can ship a circuit assembler. And you can ship, you can reduce the amount of materials that actually move because you are building the capacities to produce locally what things are needed. And then that circuit assembler can make the USB sticks, but then the next week can make a different type of circuit. So that's a logic that we are still exploring, but we can imagine also, for instance, China, the capacity that China is having over Africa, for instance, is super interesting because I could imagine that China, instead of just shipping products to Africa or to Latin America, we have also a big presence of China in Latin America, China can ship the productive capacity to make things locally back. If it makes sense. So imagine, like, again, the 21st century infrastructure is about the relocalization of production, and at least is what we want to believe. And then to pass it to Inigo, I just wanted to ask also, embedded in the competitiveness question, is like how cooperativism with competitiveness live.
Avant d'arriver peut-être à Inigo.
Before we get to Inigo, on the last points you talked about China and Africa, let us remind you that currently a major part, where there are textile industries that are Chinese industries in Africa, and they export because we produce. And then the cost increased, and then they relocated, and now they've relocated to Africa. And the country like Ethiopia, Kenya, and so on are enormous. Maybe some of the clothes you're wearing today come from one of those industries. Now, the question of competition in connection with what we talked about, the globalization, this international competition of international industries that will be more and more significant. What are the elements of answer to this lady's question?
By telling this, but it's true because to be competitive is what we want to maintain and to generate are more jobs, in our case in Europe, okay? So if you don't have work, you don't have dignity. And if you don't have dignity, you don't have liberty. Okay, so this kind of bad salaries that we have here, that probably you, young people, you have, is what we really want to change. And the way for doing this is be part of the system with a different goal. So to be competitive is so necessary. It's really necessary for doing different things, okay? So here the way is that it's great, but sometimes I think, what is going to happen with all those small businesses when if they have to face the new crisis? Where are they going to be? Because in some businesses, the size is also important. So the big markets are becoming concentrate, are less and less players, okay? So we really want to be one of those big players in order to do things in a different way. So to be competitive is perfect for cooperation, okay? So it's so important. So we cannot even imagine that we are going to exist only by European funds. With all my respect, we also go there, but you have to imagine your business alone in the near future, with no funds, with no governmental helps, only by doing your business. And this is what I mean by to be competitive, okay? And apart from that, China, first of all, Chinese people also has the right of improve. They are human beings as well, okay? So China is not the enemy. It's a big population, okay? So they have exactly the same rights that we Europeans or Africans, okay? Then they are not talking about local production. If you read down the 13 5-year plan of China, what they say is, well, in the plan that they have before, the main goals were to export. Yes, now they want to buy the world, and they will. So here is a very important thing. Not only about local production, it's the ownership of the local production. Because you can have a great local production in Chinese hands. And we don't like this, but not because they are Chinese, because we prefer to own our own businesses. Because we will be on our future, okay? And we don't want to depend on others. Not for funding, not for the future. And I think that this is an important thing.
Merci beaucoup pour la précision, Ignaco. J'ai encore.
Thank you very much. I have one question. I promised it. I can see other hands. I will try to see whether we have time. A reminder that maybe to make the connection to local or global, the Carrefour hypermarkets are developing over the world. So, gentlemen, you have a question.
I'm really interested in about learning more about the social impact within your company and what you've been able to develop. So my question is, how have you been able to measure the social impact with Silver Food Solutions?
Yeah, the way we've been able to do that is by looking at the before and after situation. How were the people, what was their economic standing before we went there to do the training, and what has happened after our training? So it's a matter of monitoring and evaluation. We go back after 5-6 months to see whether there's been any change. And as I mentioned earlier on, we're able to see that there's new furniture in the house. That's a definite change. We see that the children who were perhaps during the training not going to school have now gone back to school. That is a change. We see a husband who had run away because of poverty has come back. To us, that is a change. So it is by looking at these things which were not there before, but which are there now, which are good indicators that it is working.
And have you seen this spreading out to other regions within Zambia or outside Zambia where you haven't been?
Yes, both within Zambia as well as outside. We've seen that happening. Okay, thank you. And it's a good sign.
Before we take the questions of the managing director of that company making reusable sanitary pads, if you push the logic of what Hector does and its connection with what Diego was saying, he optimizes the grandmother's production, if you wish. So we'd be frustrated that even if they do some partnership with them, but you have to optimize, because having 1 hectare that you work with us when you're not competitive, and after that it has impacts on your income and the economy. A very last question. Well, thank you, Hector, for this presentation, and congratulations for what you've done. Feeding Africa is a major topic, and we are over 2 billion people, and within 20 to 30 years there'll be 2.4 billion, and I think that food will be key for the future. I have 2 questions for you. The first one, being an entrepreneur in Senegal, I'm wondering, how do you retain your customers? Because you do many things, but what are the actions that you actually have to retain your customers, make them loyal? And as Thierry was saying earlier on, we have a lot of people like Carrefour and Auchan supermarkets are setting up in Africa. Every month there is a new hypermarket setting up. What is your position, and how do you manage the actions and the competitiveness to work with them, or how do you see this competition coming?
Let's take the last question first. In as far as working with the multinational wholesalers or companies, there is what is called non-tariff barriers. They will bring up all sorts of reasons for not taking your product. But the fortunate thing is that the government in Zambia has come up with a policy that every one of those companies must take in at least 60% of local products. And there are officers that have been assigned to ensure that that is happening, and it is happening. Secondly, through our own contacts with some of these organizations, we have managed to take in all our products into entities such as Food Lovers in Zambia and also ShopRite. Our products are there because of, one, the government policy, and secondly, our own initiative. Now, when it comes to the first question, how do we maintain loyalty? I think that's what you're talking about. I think it's a matter of human relationships, how you treat the people, how you make them come to understand that there's as people as you are, if you see what I mean by my language, that there is something that they can contribute to national development, that they have something with them that is of true value, and this is how it will look like when it passes through silver. Here's a product which was nothing more or less, but at the end of it, they can see a product transformed. They can see their product on a ShopRite shelf. They can see this product on a Food Lovers shelf. So that is a motivating factor on their part. But not only that, where before they had no value in the product, they have put a tag because we have trained them to think with their mind, to see value in what they have, to move forward and become more contributory to the well-being, not only of their own families, but to the community and the family and the nation at large.
Merci.
Thank you very much. It'd be great if we could have. We were talking about Carrefour setting up in Senegal and Cameroon, Ivory Coast. The specificity of the French-speaking countries that they were imposed some economic agreements with France and Europe in general. So when Carrefour come, the products that are imported, Carrefour, Auchan, the others, we shouldn't not apply the custom tariffs, which has an incredible impact on local production. So there are the states are under a very heavy pressure to sign those agreements with partnership. And when it exists, you can follow what's happening in Africa. I had planned to give you a few seconds for a roundtable, but I have 1 minute left. So in 10, 15 seconds each, can you do it? Thomas, we start with you. Brief conclusion.
I think it is possible to calibrate global production and make it more human and more valuable.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Thomas. Hector?
I was ready.
Hector?
Food matters. As silver, the food people.
Thank you. And Inigo?
Well, apart from being competitive, to tell you the truth, everything is about love. We need to love others because we need solidarity. We need to love our works because we need productivity. And we need to love the others because it's better to consume local products. So everything is about love.
Merci beaucoup, Inigo. Donc, on va rappeler.
Thank you very much, Inigo. We'd like to remind you that Hector has got some food for you, but maybe one sentence that would summarize. Cooperation is a lever that have a multiplying effect for our development, and we must be going towards the future, en marche, as we say in France. And from global to local, all this can be great. Thank you very much. Let's go towards the future. Let's go.